Happy New Year and welcome back to the channel, The Chicago Griller. This is the show where I share my favorite tips, tricks, and recipes for the Weber Q. And if you think that I can help you out, hit that like button and subscribe. To kick off the year 2024, I'll be grilling this hunk of beef on my Weber Q and then finishing it off in a slow cooker to yield some drippingly delicious Chicago-style Italian beef. It's an awesome way to start off the new year, so you're going to want to check this one out. For today's recipe, I'll be using this 2 3/4 pound beef rump roast, but any boneless roast between 2.5 and 4 pounds will work for this method. And the first step in this recipe is we're going to drizzle a generous amount of olive oil on our roast, and using clean hands, distribute and spread evenly across all surfaces of your roast. Don't forget the sides while you're at it. Once complete, we're ready to season. I'll use very minimal salt because the beef broth later in this recipe has plenty of it. However, I will be quite liberal with the black pepper and Italian seasoning. Pat and/or rub that into your roast with your clean hands and repeat on the other side. And once again, don't neglect these thick edges either. And once all the sides and edges have been seasoned, we can then head on out to our grill for the high heat sear. While I was prepping and seasoning that rump roast, I've been preheating my Weber Q1200 on high with a cast iron skillet. I'm using a cast iron skillet instead of the grates because I want a flat surface for a uniform sear. So of course a Weber Q half griddle would work just as well. Regardless of what you use, place that roast directly on that flat cooking surface and grill for about 3 minutes on that first side. After 3 minutes on the grill, we're going to open the lid and then flip our roast over to the other side. And as I turn this roast over, I will admit it is not browning up as much as I liked or was hoping for. It is a chilly day here in Chicago, and it is affecting the temperature of this grill a little bit. But that's okay, a little bit of color and caramelization is all we are after. And after 3 minutes on that second side, I'm going to open the lid and using my tongs, just prop this roast up on its side to give these thick edges a bit of color as well. This is just such a soothing sound, isn't it? Anyways, once satisfied, let's bring this in for the next step. We'll be finishing our roast in the slow cooker, so place that inside, and then add the various ingredients for your Chicago-style Italian beef. First up will be 1 entire box or 4 cups of beef broth. You may recall I added very little salt earlier because this broth already contains plenty of it. Alrighty, next up I've got 2 tablespoons of Italian seasoning and then 1 teaspoon each of onion and garlic powders. The next and final ingredient that we add to the slow cooker is what makes this Chicago style, and that's jardinera. It comes in mild or spicy varieties, so use whichever you prefer. Now, I'm sure some of you might not be familiar with what this is, but it's a pretty well-known Chicago condiment that consists of an assortment of pickled vegetables that are packed in oil. Now, when used as a condiment, you want to keep that oil, but since I'm going to add this to the broth, I did the best I could and drained as much as I could out with a slotted spoon and into a separate bowl. I'll now add nearly the entire 1 pint jar of jardinera into my slow cooker. Stir and mix all the ingredients in that slow cooker thoroughly, and baste that beef roast with that broth as best as you can. And now everything's done. So now set the timer on your slow cooker to 8 hours on low and let the magic happen. Now this next step might be an optional one, but I do find it helpful. Every 2 to 3 hours or so, I like to remove the lid to my slow cooker, and then turn the beef roast over, as well as swirl around the contents of the broth and the crock pot. Again, this might actually not be necessary, as the point of a slow cooker is that you can just set it and forget it, but I do feel like turning it over and mixing things around a little bit helps things cook a lot more evenly. And 8 hours later, let's see what we got. Okay, so what do we do with this beef? Well, true Chicago-style Italian beef is cut very thinly with a meat slicer. But as most of us here probably don't have a commercial-grade deli or meat slicer sitting around on the table at home, using a slow cooker, which results in beef that you could pull apart, really gives you similar results. Alright, so that said, go ahead and grab 2 forks, and you should be able to rather easily shred and pull your beef apart. Now, somewhat counterintuitively, if your beef doesn't pull apart easily, it actually just needs a little bit more time in the slow cooker. So place it back in there for about an hour if you need to. That said, once you've got all your beef shredded, well, we're going to put it back into the slow cooker anyways. This does 2 things. First, obviously it keeps your shredded beef warm, but second, more time in the broth allows that shredded beef to just take on more and more flavors from the jardinera and spices that we added earlier. Give this all a good stir and let it simmer for about 10 minutes, and then you could go ahead and begin building your sandwiches. And for Chicago-style Italian beef sandwiches, you're going to need a good sturdy roll, like this hoagie roll. Hot dog buns won't do, they'll just disintegrate in the juices. So, hoagie roll it is. Start piling on that Italian beef. Don't hold back, there's nearly 3 pounds of it, so you're not going to run out. Next up, grab a spoon and ladle some of that broth, also known as the au jus, and ladle that onto the beef and your sandwich. This is also known as a wet Italian beef sandwich, but if you want, you could actually dunk this whole sandwich into the au jus for a dipped sandwich. But regardless of if you go with the wet route or the dipped route, we're going to finish the sandwich off with some more condiments and toppings. I like just simply adding more jardinera, but other popular toppings are sweet or hot peppers. Alrighty, and here we are, our final product. Homemade Chicago-style Italian beef sandwiches. What a tasty way to start off the new year. If you've never had this before, definitely give this a try. It is definitely worth the effort. Now, I'm trying to line up one final beauty shot to close out this video, but seriously, these Italian beef sandwiches are just so beautifully drippy and messy that I think this task is going to be impossible. So let this be a lesson. Enjoy these Italian beef sandwiches ASAP. It's an amazing mix of flavors. They're moist, they're juicy, they're tender, they're sweet, they're spicy, a little salty. They really got a little bit of everything. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I cannot wait to see you all again next time. Have a happy new year!